Hi, everybody. Today we've got a chat between myself and Desiree Taylor, who is a holistic health and wellness coach. Desiree has been a customer of McKenzies Meats, and we've been chatting back and forth about all things food, meat, nutrition. And I thought it'd be fantastic to get Desiree here on a YouTube video, on a recorded conversation, because the work she's doing is really amazing. Desiree helps people understand nutrition better. Desiree will explain more, but the reviews on her website are really fantastic and very inspiring. So Desiree, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am a big advocate and lover of your amazing food. So thank you. So glad to be here.
I'm wondering if you might be able to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your health journey, which I read up on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, where do I start? So I guess my health journey started back in 2011. I was playing hockey for the New South Wales women's team. I had a wonderful job as a manager for a large global recruitment firm. And I had a brilliant social life where I was whining and dining, maybe whining a little bit too much. I ate whatever was most pleasing to me based on my very, very limited knowledge of the food pyramid that we all grew up learning about. I didn't really give much thought as to what I was putting into my body and what I was doing, because I thought, I'm just like everyone else, I'm fine. I'm like a healthy, normal person, right? My body, however, at that stage, whilst playing elite level sport and working a full-time job and living a normal life, was screaming at me with symptoms. What I realize now is screaming at me. I used to wake up with headaches and migraines. I used to have to start my day with a couple of cups of coffee. I used to have trouble falling asleep at night. I used to wake up during the night. I used to have allergies, colds, and flus all year round. I just thought I was a sickly person. I used to have aches and pains and joint aches. I used to get injured quite often. I used to have stomach problems, irritable bowels, hormonal pain, and the list just keeps going on. Yeah, absolutely. The list is, endless. And, underneath it all, I had this underlying, what I realize now was anxiety and depression that I just masked with superficial pleasures. So I just took the quickest fix and moved on, because at that stage, I was living very much of a burn and churn life. And I was so focused on what I had to do and what I had to achieve. I just raced through life at 100 miles an hour, and I gave, absolutely no regard for what my body was saying, because I thought, oh yeah, I'm doing what everyone else is doing. I'm a professional athlete. I'll be fine. Boy, was I wrong. So in 2011, I got back from the national tournament in Cairns, and my world came to an absolute complete stop. So when I say stop, I mean I literally could not get out of bed for 8 months. I could not walk to the bathroom. My heart would race like I was about to have a heart attack. Talking at times was difficult. My body would just shut down and go into like a coma type state, and I would have to focus on my breathing. I couldn't even, wash my hair. I couldn't speak. I couldn't function at all. And I went to doctor after doctor, and I think I went to 5 different hospitals. I had multiple stays in multiple hospitals, and I did every single test under the sun, from endoscopies to colonoscopies to, heart examinations and tests and saliva tests and this and that. And after months and months of searching, one doctor said to me, Desiree, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome. And I thought, how can I have chronic fatigue? I said, I'm too busy to have chronic fatigue syndrome. I don't have time for this. And what I didn't realize, which I now realize, was that it's just like a car. When you put the wrong fuel into a car, it doesn't work properly. So my body had the wrong type of fuel and was not functioning properly. So long story short, I had to, accept my condition, and, mentally it took a massive toll on me, because I had to stop playing hockey, quit my job, move back home with my parents. It was really humbling. And I just spiraled into a really dark place and depression. And I had 2 choices there. I either succumb to my illness and, stay put in my victimness, so to speak, or I could start just immersing myself in new perspectives, new beliefs, and just doing a hell of a lot of research to help heal myself, because at that stage, unfortunately, no conventional medicine could help me. So I then embarked on a 4 or 5 year long journey to help heal myself. And I did a hell of a lot of research. I went away and studied. I sought the advice of as many alternative therapists and practitioners that I could find. And slowly but surely, I started to heal. So that is a snapshot in terms of why I do what I do, because it led me to this point where I never knew that food could be medicine. I never knew that the absence of a disease wasn't what healthy was, but being healthy was waking up with enough energy and mental clarity and vitality to live that day how you wanted. And I never knew that our thoughts, emotions and lifestyle factors all impact your health. So it just opened up this whole new playing field for me. And I was like, oh my God, I need to help others. So that was a bit about my story and why I do what I do.
Thank you for sharing your story, Desiree. It's interesting to hear the struggles that you've gone through because it's pretty relatable. I think a lot of people are feeling burnt out at the moment. Somehow you arrived at the conclusion that nutrition and the fuel that you were putting into your body was one of the reasons, or the primary reason, why your health was suffering so much. I'm curious to find out what it was that instigated that thought or made you come to that realization.
It was really interesting, actually, because I was in hospital, and after having multiple stays in hospitals, they actually admitted me because I used to get heart palpitations. And so I was connected to all these heart monitors, and they were running all these tests on my heart. However, it was only because the food that I now realize was so crap that they were feeding me at hospital. Every time I ate, so after they gave me breakfast, lunch, and dinner, every time I ate, I would get this massive surge of like anxiety and panic. My stomach would bloat. My heart would start racing with these palpitations. And it was only because of that I started to think, hey, like something's going on with this food gut connection. Let me go down that path. So when I left hospital with no answers, I started to go down that route. And that's when the more I researched, I was like, holy crap, why weren't we taught this when we were little? Why weren't we taught that food is medicine? And, so many foods that are part of our Western diet or normal diet can really contribute to chronic illness. And as I started slowly changing my diet, because I was really, my diet used to be carbs, bread, pasta, cheese, sugar, caffeine, and loads of alcohol. So I get it. I understand how hard it can be. But as soon as I started to transition away from that, I noticed my symptoms and my body start to change. My gut started to heal. Automatically, my strength and energy started to come back. My mindset improved like tenfold. And by living that experience, that's when I really started to, value the impact that food and nutrition has on health. And then it was just this, years of then investigating and using my own body kind of as a lab, just to experiment with different dietary theories and concepts, and then immersing myself in studying it. And yeah, that was the start of my journey, how I came to that realization.
So it's almost like you had to hit rock bottom. You had to be tied to a hospital bed. You had to, go through all that to stop and then remove everything and realize that maybe the biggest problem was nutrition. And
absolutely,
as you say, I mean, you obviously you weren't eating particularly well, and you were drinking a lot. But it's I imagine people weren't saying to you, "Oh, Desiree, you eat really unhealthily." Did you at the time? Did you feel like you were eating well?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because, despite I was an elite level athlete, so I was training with the New South Wales women's hockey team, 3-4 times a week, 2-hour training sessions, and then trying to recover after that. So I thought I was eating relatively healthy. You finish a game, you load up on carbs, like a big bowl of pasta or something like that. Maybe before you go and train, you'd have a banana. Then to start your day, you make sure, maybe 4 Wheat Bix or some toast or whatever it is.
Gatorades.
Yeah, that's right. Gatorades, Powerades to replenish those electrolytes. So I actually thought that what I was doing was very similar to the other girls. I think it's because of the crazy lifestyle that I'd lived before that, and just a combination of, having a genetic predisposition to it, even though our genes are not dictated or set in stone. I think, a catalyst of all of that combined just really just hit me hard.
Okay, well, you're one of the rare few lucky people who realise that the reason they feel horrendous could be something to do with the diet, and possibly something to do with the mainstream diet that everybody has deemed to be healthy or good for them. Now that you have kind of discovered that really strong link between your nutrition and your overall health, what is kind of your philosophy around healthy eating?
My philosophy has actually changed and evolved over the years. And I think a good point to mention is that, bio-individuality is key when it comes to people. So I very much believe that not one specific diet can suit many, many different people, and different people can thrive to a certain extent off different types of diets. So you've got to find the food that makes you thrive based on your cultural background, your genetic makeup, etc. I also very much believe that depending on where you're at in your health journey depends on how food can be a tool to either heal you or optimize your performance, etc. So when I was first changing my diet, I very much changed to a paleo style way of eating. And I'd still have things like, brown rice and quinoa and some sweet potato, raw honey in my remit. And that served me well and helped me get to a certain point where I was healing. Now, that being said, I also think it's important not to be so dogmatic when it comes to changing and evolving with your foods, and to continuously learn and improve and kind of open yourself up to new ways of eating. So I found that eating that paleo type diet, still having higher carbohydrate foods like brown rice, sweet potato, honey every now and then, I was still finding that during my menstrual cycle, I would get these hormonal headaches and migraines every month. And I just didn't know what to do, in terms of shifting that. And it was quite debilitating. And I hate taking like Panadol or anything to that. So I wanted to get to the root cause of it and bottom of it. And now when my body tries and communicates to me, I listen to it rather than ignore it.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, okay, what else can I do in terms of food? And then I dove into the world of low carbohydrate diets and carnivore. And, despite how healthy I was eating, or healthier I was eating, I then dove into a carnivore diet for 4 months. That was with the aim where I wanted to do it more of an experiment, because still there was so much resistance mentally. I was thinking, how can I eat like this? Like, what is going to happen to me? Despite all I knew, and I'd researched about anti-nutrients and histamines and oxalates, and I thought, okay, this can definitely be contributing to the inflammation that's causing my headaches. I was still quite resistant to it. And my body went through a bit of a transition phase where my gallbladder had to adjust, some of my stomach acid had to adjust. But when I came out of it after that 4 months, headaches were gone, migraines were gone, my menstrual cycle was like effortless. So I have never experienced more effortless cycles where it's pain-free, no PMS, no mood swings, nothing, consistent energy. I found when I was doing my weight training, I would be able to lift heavier, I would recover better. So I was like, holy crap. So that served me for that particular time to kind of push the reset button on my stomach, on my hormones, and get my body into, next level type healing. But now what I've done is, after that, I have found that I needed to introduce a little bit more carbohydrates. So carb up perhaps before, ovulation or just before menstruation, etc., with vegetables like zucchini and pumpkin and things like that. So I've got a little bit more flexibility now to play around with it. But my philosophy now is very much in general to have good quality animal proteins in your diet. And I very much believe that because, in terms of nutrients, yes, vegetables have the same type of nutrients like calcium, zinc, magnesium, vitamin B you can get from spinach. but you can get those nutrients from meat in a more bioavailable form, meaning you can absorb it a hell of a lot better and more than you would from vegetables. So my philosophy is very much to eat good quality protein coming from animal sources, which are from good sources such as yourself, so grass-fed or organic or pasture-raised, and then incorporating good quality fats into your diet, because there's been such a misconception around fats. And when people hear fats, it's always been, low fat this and low fat that. Fats is our number one source of fuel. 60% of your brain is fat. It absolutely is crucial for hormone health. It helps with digestion. It helps put you in that metabolic flexible mode, which is really important. And it gives you that long-lasting energy. So there's so many crucial things. So good quality fats like grass-fed butter, ghee, coconut oils, avocados, and then incorporating low carbohydrate food. So basically, essentially a low carbohydrate diet with good animal source protein and good quality fats. That's what I advocate for now with the majority of my clients.
Desiree, do you feel like you've evolved towards this philosophy purely on self-experimentation, or are there people who you've leaned on for their expertise, or people who you've listened to, watched? Where have you kind of pieced all this knowledge together from?
I think self-experimentation and testing these theories on your body is crucial because, as I mentioned before, bioindividuality is key, and everyone is at a different stage of their health journey. And some people might find that, they may have too much stress in their life to even be able to stick to a carnivore diet for healing, because that might be an added stress. Or some people might find that, if some people who are on the standard Western, Australian or American diet, to transition to carnivore, you're going to have a massive transition phase where the carnivore flu or whatever it may be, or ketogenic flu is just going to hit them like a ton of bricks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think self-experimentation and really listening to your body as you make these changes is key. So letting your body dictate how slowly you move and make the changes, or letting your body dictate what's right and what's wrong. And then along the way, and despite how good my diet was, I still found that I had that transition phase where I too perhaps at stages was like, okay, I've gone too hard, too fast. Let me just strip it back and go a bit slower to transitioning to a lower carb diet. So I think listening to your body is absolutely crucial and key. And then in terms of doing your own research is really important too. There's so much that we've been told out there in terms of myths, such as the wonderful Ansel Keys that fats cause cholesterol and heart disease and a whole bunch of different things. And then him, who's a scientist, recanting that before he died, and essentially it was a bogus study. So there's so much out there that's changing and evolving. So I think keeping on top of researching yourself and looking at people such as Dr. Pran, who was on your YouTube video, because there are doctors coming out and speaking. So I think engaging and
there are more and more advocates.
Absolutely. I found there was a really lovely lady, Michelle Hearn. She published a book called The Dietitian's Dilemma. Okay. And she's a big animal-based advocate because she was a dietitian working in the hospital system who just saw her patients coming in with diabetes and getting sicker and sicker based on the recommendations that they were providing. There's some really good people out there. Danielle Hamilton is great in terms of blood sugar and hormones. So my advice would be is to experiment with yourself, really listen to your body, because everyone is at different stages of their healing journey and life. And when making any physical changes in terms of food, you don't want it to be more of a stress, because that has a counterproductive, which we can talk a little bit about. And then doing your own research, and then looking at those doctors or dietitians or practitioners who may not be the norm, who may be the ones who are rebelling a little bit against the system, who may be speaking out in a different way. Just open up yourself to really listening to that with an open mind and see how it goes.
Yeah, those who are unconventional, I think it's
absolutely
a good idea to be open to that and potentially be skeptical towards what the mainstream is doing, because people don't always have your best intentions.
Absolutely.
Your best interest in their intentions. Desiree, a lot of what you talk about comes down to sort of self-awareness and understanding how your body is coping. I think it's a really interesting point. So thanks for sharing the importance of that, and like sort of pausing and listening, and then the self-experimenting as well, which I'm really into. I think within reason, often you don't have anything to lose, but you have a lot to learn. So yes, I'm glad you brought up those points. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on hormone health and how it relates to nutrition, particularly because this is a topic that I don't know a great deal about, but it kind of instinctively makes sense somehow to me, but I kind of can't articulate it properly. So maybe you could expand on it a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. So for women especially, and even for men, your hormones are a really good indicator of your general health. And I think so often certain symptoms such as pain during your period, or perhaps PMS, or mood changes, or men having low testosterone or losing their libido and sex drive, we kind of dismiss that or brush past it. But they are screaming at us in terms of something needs to change and something is at the root cause of these particular things. And I think as a society, we have things like Endometriosis Month and PCOS Month, which is great to bring awareness, but no one is actually saying that you can heal from these things.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
From it.
Yeah, 100%. It's not inevitable. Like people say, oh, that sucks. You have X. Oh, that's terrible. I feel so bad for you. Don't say it's bad for me. Help me solve this.
This is it. Yeah. And, you know, even things like insulin resistance and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, I mean, these are things that you can heal. Autoimmune diseases you can heal. And I think in terms of hormones, at the base of that, our hormones are like this delicate, intricate thing, right? Where your mindset and stress can affect it. The foods that you eat can affect it. Your sleep can affect your hormones. You know, exercise can affect your hormones. A lack of can affect your hormones. So hormonal balance, and to achieve hormonal balance, is really, I think, one of the key pillars of health is really balancing out your hormones and making sure that, you know, for a woman or man, you have those effortless cycles and there isn't any underlying issues screaming at you. And in terms of the foods that you eat, so insulin is a hormone, right? So when you eat something that is high in carbohydrates, for example, so things like potatoes or white rice or pastas or bread, it creates this blood sugar spike. So insulin is secreted by the pancreas. It takes the sugar out of your blood and you either use it or you store it. However, when insulin is high, it actually throws your other hormones off. For example, it can tell the ovaries to make more testosterone, which you don't necessarily want. It can contribute to things like estrogen dominance, which is the root cause of the majority of problems. Things like PCOS, which I mentioned, premenstrual syndrome, dysmenorrhea, thyroid imbalances. So the foods that you eat that result in this higher blood sugar level and higher excretion of insulin directly have this massive effect on your hormones. I think that's important to mention because that is, you know, one of the reasons why I advocate for a lower carbohydrate animal-based diet is because it is really healthy and healing for hormones. And how your blood sugar works, you want it to be stable. You want that long-lasting energy. And when you have that stable blood sugar and insulin isn't constantly, you know, working its ass off to help assist the body, then your hormones are balanced as well and can actually do its job. So it creates that nice little ripple effect just by simply making sure that you eat well. On the other side as well, your thoughts and emotions 100% have a massive impact on your hormones. And, you know, myself, I speak to this very passionately because my diet doesn't change. But as soon as something is up for me in my cycle, so perhaps I'm getting a little bit less sleep, I feel maybe a bit more anxious, or, you know, I notice an imbalance or whatever it is with my hormones, it's often because I am more stressed or I'm losing sleep, or maybe my thought and mindset is a bit toxic. So in terms of that and speaking on that, I mean, stress has a massive impact on your hormones. And I think nowadays we throw stress out there as just your word, you know, like I'm so stressed and things are so stressful and this is a stressful environment, but we kind of take it for granted, but it really is a massive player in terms of how wired, tired and amped up you can feel all at the same time, and how balanced your hormones are. And, you know, stress in itself can lead to problems such as insulin resistance or PCOS or endometriosis or, you know, PMS or whatever hormonal imbalances there are. Now, in terms of stress, I mean, your body can think it's under attack simply by your thoughts. We have how do I explain this simply? Okay, we have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. And back in caveman days, when we had a lion chasing us after a hunter-gatherer trying to track it down, we want that sympathetic fight or flight response to be activated. Cortisol, which is a stress coping hormone, pumps through our body. Adrenaline, as well, tells us to get out of there, which is great. We want that if we're being chased by a lion or tiger. But what happens nowadays is that fight or flight and sympathetic nervous system response can be activated simply by you sitting on the couch, maybe beating yourself up or thinking about all the things you didn't do for the day. Fight or flight response activated.
Or a notification on your phone.
That is absolutely the number one.
All day, every 5 minutes.
Bing, bing, bing. Yeah, that can provide anxiety. That can provide this heightened state of fight or flight. Your fight or flight response can be activated while you're at work doing some work, but you've had an argument with your boss and you're thinking about that subconsciously. It can be activated by, sugar or caffeine. So 24/7 in today's world, that fight or flight response is activated, which means cortisol, which is your stress coping hormone, is being excreted in your body. And when cortisol is consistently being excreted, it means that things like progesterone and estrogen and testosterone may go out of balance. So those are really important factors to realize. So, just as I say, the food is really important for hormonal balance, taking care and attending to the stress in your life is just as important. And, a simple way that we can do that is by activating our parasympathetic nervous system, which allows your body to rest, digest, and repair. Okay. So when you're in that fight or flight, no rest, no digesting, no repairing. Parasympathetic allows you to rest, digest, and repair. And that can be done through practices which I'm sure you're familiar with, like deep belly breathing, meditation, anything that relaxes you, like dancing, laughing, reading a book, bringing you back to the present moment, walking, exercise sometimes, as much as it is a stress on the body, it can be a good stress on the body. So yeah, that's very important you attend to that aspect as well for good hormonal health.
Again, getting to the root cause of things. I like it. It's sort of what's ultimately
Absolutely.
causing this pain or these ripple effects throughout the body. Yeah, I really like that. Desiree, you mentioned before about metabolic flexibility, and I recently wrote a blog article about ketogenic diets, and sort of doing more research into being in ketosis, I kind of arrived at some sort of conclusion that was like, what you really want is to be metabolically healthy. And the way I understood it as, complete nuffy, is that you want to be able to burn fat for energy, possibly most of the time, but certainly a lot of the time. And you want your body to also be flexible enough to then burn or then be able to use carbohydrates for energy when it needs to in certain circumstances. And being able to flick between the two, I know I've experienced that. You just feel like you've got more control and a deeper understanding of your body from my perspective. I'd be interested to hear you talk about metabolic flexibility and maybe in the context of how you talk to a client or somebody you work with about it as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think with metabolic flexibility, what's good in terms of how I talk to clients about it, for them to see the value in transitioning from being a sugar burner to a fat burner and being able to, go between both, is the benefits that you get. Some of the benefits that you get when you switch over to be able to burn fat for fuel as well as sugar for fuel is your cravings for sugar diminish, your cravings for carbohydrate diminish. You can go easily between 5 to 6 hours without eating, so you don't get hangry anymore.
Which is awesome.
Which is awesome. Yeah. I used to get angry all the time.
Yeah.
You get really consistent energy throughout the day, and forget about the physical energy. Your mental clarity is off the charts. And it's funny because I've just finished with a client who she was very much a sugar burner. So she would have to eat every 2 to 3 hours. She would crave carbs, carbohydrates, crave sugar. And she was actually really low in energy. And the beauty with metabolic flexibility and switching into burning fat for fuel is it can happen quite quickly, actually. So everyone is different in terms of making that transition. But for her, within 8 weeks, she switched over. And now she can fast easily. So she can do intermittent fasting without it sending her insane. She has better sleep. For the first time ever, she's wanting to exercise and has the energy to exercise.
Right.
She doesn't have any carb or sugar cravings. So it's just eating those good quality meals and being satisfied and satiated, which is so important. So, and I think the biggest benefit in terms of that, selling this metabolic flexibility, because and why I think we have to sell it is because for some people who are sugar burners and have high carbohydrate diets, which is, even a paleo type diet was quite high in carbohydrates, which is something I had to transition from as well. Why we want to sell it is because it can be difficult. It can be challenging to get there and be really strict with limiting your carbohydrates and eating a particular way for however long it takes you to switch over to be able to burn fat for fuel consistently. So I think we have to sell it a little bit, or I have to sell it to my clients at least.
Desiree, when you say you have to sell it, is that because it's just this concept is so far into them that it's really starting from scratch? Is that part of the challenge?
100%. Yeah. So number one, it's a foreign concept and it's going against everything that they've perhaps believed or learnt. So often now, even in the fitness industry and stuff like that, I see people still saying, you've got to eat 3 meals a day, 3 snacks. And I'm like, no, you don't. That's just constant little insulin spikes and blood sugar spikes.
That's a very good way to sell supplements.
Absolutely. Yes. Good point. Yeah. That's it. And I think also because in order for your body to transition, and I said you can do it slowly. So you might find, like, if you're having bread, pasta, and sugar, you might find that, you cut out the bread first. You might swap the pasta for, like, I don't know, cauliflower rice or something like that. Then you might make these small changes to get you to a place, which is how I work with my clients, with small steps equal big changes, to get you to a place where you're then, just having your 3 meals a day, your energy is a little bit more consistent. But to get there is quite difficult. And sometimes, there's a bit of a die-off effect, a bit of a detoxing effect coming off the sugars. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So it's very much an addictive thing. And when you do start to lower it, your body does start to detox. And you can go through phases where you feel a little bit shit, if you don't mind me saying that. To be really totally honest. Yeah. And for some people, it can be enough to deter them, where they think, this is, I'm feeling worse, this must not be working, or, this isn't consistent. So really just talking people through that process and letting them know that there is going to possibly be, depending how bad your diet is, but there is going to be some type of transition. You may be a little bit more headachy, a little bit low fatigue sometime, but this is what you will get from it, can just kind of set that end goal for them to keep going. Yep. Because for some, it can take, for me, it took, about 4 or 5 weeks to make that switch, where then I started to notice, because the signs that you would want to look for in terms of when you are burning fat for fuel and you've got a bit more flexibility is that, you can easily go, what I mentioned before, 5 or 6 hours without feeling hangry. You feel satiated and full after a meal, your cravings diminish, you can fast easier, you've got that consistent energy, you don't feel like a nap at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or after you eat. So those are some key signs, but it's very different for everyone. And some people might take months, some people might take a week. So it's just coaching people through that process.
Yeah, wow. No, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I think if people are going to work with you and, for it to be super successful, it seems like they do need a relatively open mind and, again, a willingness to get to the root cause of things and actually put in the effort to make a sustained change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was a really good insight into what it would be like to work with you. Desiree, maybe you could go like a little, maybe a step deeper into how you help people. And because I'd be curious to find out like a bit of a structure of the program that you would take somebody through. Maybe you could delve a little deeper.
Absolutely. My approach is very different. What a health coach does, people often ask, how is a coach different to a dietitian or a nutritionist? With a dietitian or a nutritionist, they can, prescribe or give you a certain set way of eating. and some tools. Whereas a coach, and what I do is basically handhold you through the process. And that can be anything from giving you recipes to showing you how to cook, to talking you to a shopping tour, to how to read the ingredients, you know, which are crazy, the shops at the moment, and how, I mean, that's a whole different topic, how we get, you know, health foods are not really health foods. So everything in terms of really hand holding people through the process, because if you give someone a list of things to change, or you go to your doctor and they say you need to cut out sugar, for some people, it is just so overwhelming, and they'll throw that list away and be like, too hard. So the process in terms of what I follow, and I mentioned it before, small steps equal big lasting change. So I take my clients through a journey. It can be, you know, 8 weeks, it can be 10 weeks. For some, it could be a year. And I coach them through not only what physical changes that they have to make, but the mindset and mental blocks and emotional eating patterns that they have to decipher and work through. So it's very much, I work with mindset as well as the physical changes. And to give you a bit of an insight, it still surprises me to this day, but often the first place where I have to start with a lot of my clients is to drink water and to drink more of it. And I will ask them to do that, you know, every day, and focus on that until it becomes second nature. And it's part of their, you know, subconscious process. It's a new habit formed, drinking water.
Yeah, I just want some water. But is that like, is it the water that's making the difference, or is it the learning how to change your habits that's, you know, that you're trying to teach people?
You know, that's a really interesting one. So in terms of water, I think people underestimate the value of it. And I've had, you know, clients of mine say that just by drinking more water, they get more energy. They think they're actually chronically dehydrated because their bowel improvements start to improve. They find more energy. They have more mental clarity just by water. But it's also a great step to teach them how to do something consciously every day until it becomes an unconscious pattern. And then it's implemented in their life. And then I move on to the next small step, which could be, I don't know, to make sure that they're having, you know, good quality steaks every day, and then the next small step, and then the next small step. Because then when you look back over a period of 10 weeks or 3 months or 4 months, they would have implemented these small changes, but because they become new habits, the transition for them to move to, say, from a standard diet to a low carbohydrate is a little bit more effortless. And along the way, you know, I find that especially, you know, we have such a huge emotional connection to food, and majority of the battle and my coaching is spent overcoming and deciphering some of those emotional connections, asking yourself whether you're eating because you're bored and, you know, that bag of potato chips is really fun, or asking yourself things like, am I eating and craving chocolate because I'm feeling like I'm really unfulfilled and chocolate is, you know, mentally stimulating or gives me some love. So deciphering that can have such a nice ripple effect and make the changes in terms of what you need to change on your plate a lot easier. And these are patterns that come from when we're young. You know, I've God bless our parents, but like you're trained where you're rewarded with food. You use food to soothe your emotions. And when you're sad, you know, you might be distracted by, let's go have an ice cream or something like that. So this is stuff that's deep in our psyche. And I find that I have to coach people through the mental and emotional blocks first in order for them to just implement a new habit, or even just change their perspective of things, where it's like, you know what, I am going to try it this way because I now understand why I do what I do.
Again, getting to the root cause. I like it.
Yeah.
And I think as you mentioned, like the step-by-step process, that sort of instinctively makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to get to the root cause and you're open to, you know, to making a lasting change, I think Desiree could really help. Desiree, I want to talk selfishly a little bit about McKenzies Make Now. So you are a McKenzies Make customer, and we're lucky enough to deliver a meat box to your place. I think you're on a weekly cycle.
And my little 4-year-old is so excited for the delivery because he loves meat. I mean, one of the first things I fed him when he was young, a baby, was liver, because I made a liver pate for him. And like, I think it was liver and sweet potato I fed him because, you know, liver is one of the most nutritious foods on the planet.
Absolutely.
And organ meat. Yeah. So he gets really excited for your deliveries.
Oh, good on him. Get them started early. Well, he's certainly, he's a step ahead of everyone else, having you as a mum. He's going to be
gosh, I don't know about
a wise little fella.
He could go two ways. He could rebel when he gets to like, 12 and be like, oh my God, you deprived me of sugar.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, I imagine. It's got to be like, oh, make your own decisions, but I know best.
But, just on that, I should mention, because it's really interesting, because I find like, because he is fueled on things like good quality meats and like good quality vegetables and fats and stuff, and he doesn't have that, association where he goes to a birthday party. It's not all about the cake and the lollies for him. It doesn't even register for him at the moment.
Wow.
He just literally eats whatever I give him.
Yeah.
And he's quite content. I mean, it could all shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
I'm expecting it will, but it's just interesting to observe that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And, he goes to school, and I imagine, actually, I am curious, what does he have for breakfast?
So he has I just made a really nice liver pate, which is just liver and butter and some garlic.
Yeah,
so he has that with fermented veggies and his eggs. So he normally has that to start the day. An avocado. And then I make like this almond meal bread, which he likes. So he's technically thinks he's eating bread. Yeah. So he has that if he wants. And then he has like, some fruit or nut butter or something like that for snacks. And then he has his meal. So he eats whatever me and my partner eat. So, and he's quite content. Like he eats salmon, he eats steak, liver, lamb, the mincemeat he loves that you guys do. So, and that's such good quality mincemeat, because
it is awesome meat.
With your you can really tell the difference. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking, what's the benefit of this? If you compare the meat, so number one, your type of meat where it is grass-fed, it's good quality, you can tell by the taste, you can tell by the way it cooks, and not to mention how the animals are raised and, the health of that animal and what they eat as well. So there's a clear distinction between the mince that you'd get from like Woolies or something like that to the meat that you offer. So it's nice to, see the difference.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't come in those little squiggles that looks like.
No, it doesn't. That's right.
Might
it's
be
like
from.
That's
might
right.
be from 100 different cows. Ours is generally just from one.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's how it should be.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing. Yeah, it's good to get that little insight into a 14-year-old boy and life with proper nutrition. Because he's going to school and all the other kids are smash their wheat bix with sugar. And he's got fat and protein to keep him fueled.
Yeah. And really, I think sometimes I actually joke about it to my friends. I'm like, I should feed him some bloody Maccas to slow him down. Won't ever. But he's just like full of life and full of energy, and but in a good way. Yeah. So it makes a difference. And I love everything of McKenzies Meat, because your produce is really good. And I just want to say, sorry, I'm totally plugging you guys here, but the price range as well, I think is like super on point. And I often find that if I was to buy the exact same amount from Woolworths or Coles or even my local butcher, it would cost me a lot more, and it's crappy quality. So thank you.
That was the intention from the start. My local butcher doesn't do as good a meat as we do, and it's not grass fed, and it's more expensive. And I live in the eastern suburbs, so people don't even a lot of people don't look at the price tag when they go there. And if you want to eat a decent amount of quality meat, I found it just was impossible. So that's the idea. Like the product is made for people like you, Desiree, who value really good quality meat, and also you've got a son and a partner. Like you guys will eat quite a bit. There's 3 of you in the household, so it's designed to cater for that, and it's obviously convenient because we deliver it to your home.
Oh, it's so convenient. I'm so grateful, honestly, especially during lockdown, because I mean, I'm plugging you guys I'm referring you to all my friends, because they're like, where do we go? We can't go to our local farm markets. We can't go, where do we get these good sources from? And, grass-fed is so important. Good sources is so important. I just want to mention this, especially for your gut health, especially for your hormone health. Yeah. I mean, when my hormones were really bad, and I was quite sensitive at one time, when I ate a month or two of conventional, antibiotic hormone added raised animals, I felt it in my hormones. I felt like there was an imbalance and difference. So it's so important for overall health to get good quality produce such as yours.
Couldn't agree more. Funnily enough.
That's why you do what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Desiree, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge, or not all of it, but a lot of it. And yeah, I don't know, like key themes about getting to the root cause, understanding hormones, practicing good habits, managing your stress, the fact that everything is all interconnected and making one small change at a time. Like there's some of the key things that I took out of our conversation, and I found it really insightful. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.
Oh, I'm grateful too. All right, Desiree, we're going to finish it up there. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon, so much.